All right. So good evening, everyone. I'm glad you could come out this evening. I'm Tom Leahy, and
I'm Candice Suarez.
we're with OptoMed, which is the organization that RCS has brought in to the school to help the students do a better job of planning for and executing a college plan. And so I wanted to first just kind of address that concept and what we need to be thinking about before we get into looking at what the assessment results tell us. So, one of the biggest issues we have today with higher education is the chaos that occurs oftentimes when a young person goes off to college, right? Because we wait till we get there, or we think we know what we want to pursue in terms of a college major, but we soon find out that that's not right. And so we start experimenting, and pretty soon that 4-year experience turns into 6, and we graduate with 30 extra credit hours we really don't need for the major that we ended up earning. And of course, the implications of that is if someone's paying for that extra time and those extra credits. So what we're trying to do is provide a process that will make that much more efficient for the family. Okay, you say, well, that's great, that's practical and all that, but what about the student? Well, we also are very concerned about helping young people prepare to launch and launch successfully. And there's much more to that than GPA and standardized test scores, right? Success is determined by not just academics, but by other things that the student is involved in, the things that mom and dad have taught them, character, attributes, and that sort of thing. So it's bringing all that together to help them be as competitive as possible when we apply. And we want to make sure that we're going in a direction that they're going to fit, in a direction that's going to deliver a potential job and career on the other side of college. That's the whole point. Because when they come home to visit, you want them to be there as a guest and not a tenant, correct? If I'm wrong, raise your hand. Okay. So I like to facetiously tell people that we are a child relocation service, right? Because,
well, I always like to say too, is that, we're not looking, the question of leaving college or leaving high school and doing the same thing for the next 40 years and retiring doesn't usually happen to us anymore, and I think that the pressure on kids sitting here as sophomores, juniors, to think about that future, they're not sitting here as 17-year-olds picking what they're going to do for the rest of their lives. They're picking what they're going to do first, picking something that makes sense for the first thing that they do after school, something that's going to make sense, that's going to make them a living, that's going to give them a good launching off point. So that's what we're here to do, is make sure that they know a lot about themselves, know a lot about their strengths, what they're capable of doing, what their personality says they should be doing, what suits them, so that they can figure out what they're going to do first.
right. And so the first step in that is figuring out direction. And what I'm showing you right now is sort of the three-pronged approach to this thing called college planning, right? So you have an admissions piece, you have a marketing piece, and you have a financial aid piece, and they exist side by side, and they should be approached, simultaneously, if you would. But we're really looking for that foundation and that base for making better decisions, and that is really the direction. That is academic direction. That we call our assessment career and academic assessment, because the point to it is to identify the right college majors or major to pursue. And that then begins to drive the college selection process, right? If you want to pursue these 2 majors or this 1 major, then we need a college that has those, right? It makes sense. And then we, marry that up with, needs and wants of the student in terms of a campus, the culture, et cetera. And the financial piece comes into play to tell us what schools we should be targeting, and on and on. You can see the process there. So I just wanted to share that with you because this is sort of what we're following with your students as we move through junior year into senior year and prepare them to apply and follow their senior year. All right.
Yeah, so the first thing that we do is when were you in last week with the sophomores, and they took the assessment. I'm sure that they talked to you about it, or you knew that that was happening. So they took the assessment, and tonight we're going to go over general results. All right. And just kind of give you an overview on how to read that report and what it's going to be telling you. So it looked at 3 different things. Okay. The first thing it looked at was thinking style. It had math problems on it. It had vocabulary on it. And what it's going to assess is numerical reasoning, numerical processing, verbal reasoning, verbal skill, to give an overall thinking style index. Okay. And then it does break it into the difference between the verbal and the numerical as well. After the thinking style, it goes into personality traits. So think of this thinking style as this is what your child is capable of doing. Okay, this is what their skill set is. The personality traits are going to be looking at 9 different character traits, and we'll go over all 9 of those with you tonight and tell you what they each mean. And that's going to tell you what type of setting, what type of worker they are, to know what job would be best suited for them. And then it goes into looking at their top 3 interest categories, and we'll go over those with you as well. So it takes all 3 of those and melds them together to provide the profile. And then we show you the bell curve, because it's going to be, you'll see the graph when you look at it, the majority of the population is under that big bell curve piece. All right. So 4, 5, 6, even a 3 or a 7 is under that bell curve. So it doesn't mean that a 5 is a 50% and you failed something, especially with the personality trait things. There are no right or wrongs, but that just shows that you are smack in the average of the majority of the population. With that said, if you score 9s and 10s or 1s and 2s, it just shows that you're a little bit more unique. You have a little bit of a stronger drive in a certain area. So so a 1 is not necessarily better or worse than a 10, and vice versa. And we'll tell you what each of those extremes mean and all of that.
Right. Yeah. And the more unique you are, the more restrictive the jobs are going to be that are displayed, right? Because the whole idea here is this profile that's created is going to deliver at the end of the assessment a list of jobs that are appropriate for that profile to consider based upon what people with a similar profile are actually doing. So when we say you should consider something in engineering, it's because engineers out there working are just like you, right? So it's kind of a very practical approach. So we'll get into all that and you'll see how it works. But yeah, so keep that in mind. The more unique you are, the less jobs are going to show up.
Does anybody have any questions about all of that so far?
All right.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see here. All right, so we're going to jump into the summary graph. We're going to use the graph to talk to, but I want to make a point that your students received 2 reports, okay, written reports. They look exactly alike, and they are, except for the jobs that are delivered at the end, okay? And we'll talk about that later. But what the point I want to make right here is that while we're showing you the summary graph, it is very important. It is critical that you read the narrative explanation in the report, okay? Because this is about much more than a number on a scale, okay? The descriptive bullets within the report about your student or about you is what you need to focus on, not necessarily where what number you came away with, right?
Because it's really easy to look at it and freak out because it's a 2.
Yeah.
But
okay.
So 2 means something. It's not like it's a low score.
Yeah. So for people like for people like us who do this all the time, we can visually summarize a student just by looking at the summary graph, right? Because we've been doing this for so long. We know what the bullets are that are going to be associated with a certain number. But, you know, for someone looking at it the first time, and that's why normally when we do this on an individual basis, we don't even show them the summary graph. We just go directly to the report and go down through the explanation, the bullets and all of that, because we know as human beings, we're going to focus on those numbers, right? So, but to make this an easier conversation, we're going to use the summary graph. Okay.
All right, so this is a sample. All right, so you can see this is exactly what it's going to look like when you look at your summary graph printout that was sent to your child. So the top part is the learning index. So you can see Sally's sample has an overall learning index of a 6. All right, and if you kind of superimpose that bell curve over top of it, she's right in that a little bit above average for overall learning index. She has a couple outliers there with the verbal skill being 3, and the verbal skill is vocabulary knowledge. It's you know, it's higher level, like similar to the SATs where it does that analogy kind of stuff, like the vocabulary piece. And then she also had a 7 as a higher part with numerical reasoning, and the numerical reasoning is like math word problems, like figuring out answers and solving mathematical problems. The verbal reasoning was a 5, and that's the same type of thing, verbal problem solving. And numerical ability is your straight math fact kind of computations. Yeah, and that was a 5 for Sally's sample also.
So again, keep in mind the bell curve.
Yep.
Right? Most of us, 95% of us are 2 standard deviation people, right?
Yeah. It's similar to, like, if you think about it like an IQ test, 100 is that average. The majority of the population is going to be right around that 100 to 115 to 85.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
There's very few of us that are going to be theoretical physicists
Right.
and come away from here with a 10, right?
Yeah.
In learning index. So I just put that in, you know, and keep that in perspective. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, so the personality traits is next. All right, so the very first one, and when we're looking at all of these, we're taking them from the perspective of the workplace. All right, so for the first one, the example of energy level is the first one. So you don't want to think about this as your student has tons of energy all the time. Think of it from how they would approach a work environment. So
or I had a mother, because the student had a 2, she wanted to know if he was lazy.
Right.
No.
I need to breathe a little bit.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
Like hyperventilating.
Yeah, I guess that's my you beg. I guess. Yeah.
All right. So if you're a 9 or a 10 on the energy level, you prefer a work environment with lots of activity. Okay. You can handle multiple tasks at once. You can handle lots of stuff happening around you. Think emergency room setting, where you can jump from task to task really quickly, and there's a high energy level required of you. That's a 9 or a 10 preference. If you were a 1 or 2 in energy level, you're going to prefer a work environment where it's a much slower pace, one task at a time, one direction at a time, not a lot of craziness around you. You might need it to be quiet. You know, you might need less visual distractions, just a slower energy pace. Okay. So that's energy level. So then if you're in the middle of that, then you can, you know, think of it just like that. 9 or 10 is high energy, 1 or 2 is lower energy setting. And then if you're in the middle, that's, you know, average. You can go either direction. So the next one is assertiveness. So this is where it's measuring leadership. All right. But what's important to remember about the assertiveness piece, it's not whether you can or can't be a leader. It's whether you have to be a leader. Okay. I always say the 9s or 10s are the people that walk into a room and are immediately taking charge. They're immediately divvying out tasks, looking around and telling everybody what to do. Okay. So they need to be a leader. If you're a 1 or a 2 in leadership, it doesn't mean that you can't take the lead. You just don't really want to. You'd prefer to sit back and let somebody else do that. All right. Questions so far on those first 2? All right. The next one is sociability. And this one is kind of like it sounds. If you're a 9 or a 10 in sociability, you are the kind of a person where in school you love group project day. You love to be able to work with others. You would need to work in a setting that's highly social. You want people around you. You want to be able to bounce your ideas off of others and work with, people. That social piece feeds you and makes you feel energized. If you are a 1 or 2 in sociability, you would much rather work solo. You'd much rather be in your little spot, in your lab with the rats or in your cubicle with your computer, and you would much rather work without the social distractions. Thank you. All right. The next one is manageability. So this one deals with how easily you're managed. If you're a 9 or a 10 in manageability, you're a rule follower. Okay, you are a policies and procedures person. You are always looking to make sure that the choices that you're making are following the rules. If you're a 1 or 2 in manageability, you're much more of a rebel. You'd rather make your own rules. You'd rather, you might bend them a little bit.
You're a rebel.
You're a rebel. So that's manageability, whether you are a rule follower or whether you are a rebel at the extremes. The next one is attitude. I always look at attitude as your glass half full, glass half empty kind of person. So if you're a 9 or a 10 in attitude, you approach the workplace like, of course we're going to try that idea. Of course it's going to work. Let's try, let's go. Let's give it a try. This job is great. I love coming to work every day. The boss, is a great person. I'm happy here. Everything's going to work out okay. If you are a 1 or a 2 in attitude, you might be a little less optimistic. You might be like, why do we need to do it differently if it's working fine the way it is? Why do we want to try that when, the way we do it over here is just fine? I don't think that that's going to work. It's that person that's always, maybe a little bit negative about new ideas and things. Might be your 1 or a 2 on this.
Eeyore,
yeah. The next one's decisiveness. So in decisiveness, we like to use the analogy of a firing range. So if you are, this is how quickly you make decisions. If you're a 9 or a 10 in decisiveness, you are a ready, fire, aim. Okay, which means that you're not really taking the time to look at all the facts first. You're not taking the time to make your pros and cons lists and really analyze what's going on. You're making really fast decisions. All right. If you are a 1 or a 2 in decisiveness, you're more of a ready, aim, and you might get around to firing eventually. All right. So it takes you so long to make decisions that it's kind of a paralyzing situation. So the extremes in this one, I think, are a little dangerous. And it's just something to be self-aware of if you are at the extremes on either end of this one. Okay. The next one is accommodating. So accommodating is, how easygoing you are. And if you're a 9 or a 10 in accommodating, you are so accommodating that you kind of allow everybody else to make those decisions. All right. You're like, oh, go ahead. Yep, that's fine. You don't really assert yourself as much. Okay. So you might be a little bit of a doormat. You let people walk all over you a little bit. Okay. If you are a 1 or a 2 in accommodating, you are the other way around. You always voice your opinion. You always stick up for what you want, almost to the detriment of others. You're really quick to say, no, this is the way it is. All right. So you might be that person that steps on the doormat on the way over. Okay. The next one is independence. And this does not mean your child's ability to go off and live on their own. This is how they're approaching the workplace. All right. So if you're a 9 or a 10 in independence, this means that when it comes to your work, you prefer to be given a task and left on your own to figure it out. All right. You don't really need somebody hovering over top of you and micromanaging you. That would drive you crazy. You like to just figure it out on your own. If you are a 1 or a 2 in independence, you need step-by-step instructions. You are happy when someone gives you one thing to do at a time, comes over and checks on you. Yep, that looks good. Go on to step number 2. You know, you need that constant feedback and directives. All right. You're the kind of person when it comes to putting something together, you lay out all the instructions and all of the pieces, you know, before you dig in and do it. Whereas a 9 or a 10 would just open up the package and start putting it together without instructions.
And have 3 pieces left over.
Yeah, I'm a 1 on this.
Where do they go?
All right. And the last one in personality traits is objective judgment. So in decisiveness, we talked about the speed at which we make decisions. This is how we make decisions. So if you're a 9 or a 10 in objective judgment, this means that you are someone that really looks at facts and data and logic to make your decisions. If you are a 1 or a 2 in objective judgment, you are someone that goes with your feelings, your intuition, and your gut to make decisions. All right. So I always like to point out, like, if you are a 1 in objective judgment and a 10 in the speed of your how quickly you make decisions, you know, that self-awareness, you know, if you know that about yourself, stepping back, consulting others, you know, taking a moment before you make snap decisions if you go with your gut every time. Okay. Questions about the personality traits? Okay. It's a lot of information.
Well, let's go to the report for this part. Now, you can see the bullet points here for the personality traits. So that's what I was talking about, needing to read. So, all right, interests.
Okay, so there are 6 interest categories, and these are all 6 of them in no particular order. So one of them is enterprising, and this is activities where you're persuading others, presenting ideas. Salespeople are often enterprising. You know, it's that presentation piece in sales, right? Financial administrative doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to work in a bank, although it could. This is your business type of jobs, your organization, your procedures, you know, business. People service is pretty much like it sounds. People that are high in the people service area, they want to choose a job where you're helping others, promoting the welfare of others, like teachers, counselors, those kinds of people are high in people service. Technical is research, scientific activities, computers, technical pieces, all right? Mechanical is being a builder. It doesn't necessarily mean it's mechanics, but you're working with your hands, working with tools, machinery, you know, those kinds of things.
You're a builder.
You're a builder. And then creative doesn't necessarily mean that you're an artist, although artists are often creative. It means that you use your imagination. You're a creative thinker. You think outside the box. You're always looking for new and innovative ways to do things, like inventors, okay? Or big picture thinkers.
Right. And so the report will identify the students' top 3 interests in order of priority. Okay, so when you look at the interests, understand the first one is your most important. And then the second, the third plays in the game, but it's not as important as the first 2. Okay, so just keep that in mind. All right. Now what? Oh, we're going to talk about jobs now. Okay, so we've seen the 3 pieces, right? Thinking style, personalities, and interests. So now we've got a profile. And so the report is then going to produce a list of jobs based on a selection. Well, let me talk about the mechanics of this for just a minute. So when we take the assessment, at the end, they ask you to select 3 out of these 16 job categories to see what job matches there are underneath that cluster title. So that's before I was alluding to 2 reports. the first report you see will have the jobs that are associated with the category that the student chose, or that you chose if you're the student. So you'll see that report, and those jobs are shaded in blue. So I just call it the blue report. But anyway, and then you're going to get a second report, which has jobs, because when we get the results, we go in the back door and we uncode what the student marked, and we run the profile across all 16 categories. All right, so why do we do that? Well, let me explain that. Okay, so here's Sally's sample again. This is again a hypothetical, but you remember Sally's summary graph. Well, we're seeing it again here, but we're seeing it overlaid on top of the coding for a job, which in this case is widget vendor, right? So this is how this works. So it said, that the experts say that to be a widget vendor, you have to have an overall learning index of 5, 6, or 7. And if you remember, Sally was a 6. There's her big number, 6. So she's right there in the middle. That's great. She had a couple of outliers. So 82% match for thinking style, right? Or learning index. Behaviorally, not such a great match, right? Look at all the outliers she has based on what they say the personality needs to be for a widget vendor.
She might be miserable.
Might be miserable, right?
Vendor.
Yeah. Yeah. So 54% match, and then interests 71% match. So you get the idea. So the three of those come together then in the algorithm that they use. So they say that overall, this is a 69% match for Sally to be a widget vendor. Well, this job would not show up in her array because they draw the line at 75%. So that's the first thing to remember, is that any job that shows up on the reports is at least a 75% or better match for your profile. All right. But we still have a 25% spread, right? So when we look at your profile under one job category, we may have 25 jobs show up. But if we look at your profile across all 16, that 25 may be reduced to 5 because there's better matches in a different category, right? So that's why we give you the two reports. So the green report are your best matches across all 16 job categories. So for me, and my advice is, not that you can't do the jobs that are in the blue report, but I would focus on the jobs that are in the green report that are your best matches across all 16 job categories, or your top best matches. And they're going to be across all 16 in most cases. There'll be a smattering of jobs in every category in most cases, which, because your skill set, your personality, whatever, is suitable to certain jobs that are under each one of those clusters. All right, does that make sense? Everybody good with that? Okay. All right. So let's go back to, well, let's just go to since we're on the green report, we'll just use that to demonstrate. Okay, so when you get the reports, I'll send, they're in PDF form, which means these links are live. Okay. And so let's go out to, let's see, what do we think? Should we go to fashion designer? Okay, let's just take a look at fashion designer. Oh, and this number here is the category, right? So 1 obviously is under agriculture, food, natural resource, right? Agricultural sales rep. Okay. All right. Let's say, what was I going to look
Fashion
at?
designer.
Fashion designer. Okay. Let's look at, so when you click, I'm going to have to stop sharing and reshare because we're going out to the internet now. So let me get there. Okay. Back here and reshare. Okay. So you'll come out to the ONET, which is it's a huge website of information about the jobs and careers. So here's fashion designers. What do? You design clothing and accessories, create original design. Here are some titles you may hold in various jobs that fashion designers have. And you come on down, it tells you what tasks you have to perform on a daily basis, right? And if you want to get even deeper in the weeds, you can click on details, and it'll tell you just how important each task is to that job, whether it's core or supplemental. All right. Technology that you have to be able to use, computer assisted design software, obviously, and that sort of thing, knowledge, skills, abilities, it just gives you a really good idea of what's involved on a daily basis, on an ongoing basis, to do this kind of work. So it's all about looking at the jobs that show up on your array. If something, sounds interesting, to go in to the ONET and dive deep and see if it makes sense to you in terms of what they're describing. And then we talk about training and education. This is a job zone 3. There's 5 job zones. It will tell you exactly how much education people have who are doing the job. All right, so only 24% actually have a bachelor's degree, so associate's degree. So you can get an idea of the level of education you need to plan on to be, competitive in that field. And then, more. And then this is nice. It's associated jobs. If you don't like what fashion design is telling you, here's some other things that are, like that you can look at. Interior design, right? Marketing manager, if it says this, bright outlook, that means it's growing. If you see a leaf, a green leaf, it means it's environmentally friendly. And down here, okay, so that's the passion piece, right? That's because what we're trying to do is we're trying to identify something that we get our heart and mind around in terms of work, but we also want it to be viable, right? We want to know that it's that piece about not coming home to be a tenant, right? So that this is where that comes into play. So you can select, let's select Virginia. All right, let's just, how about a Richmond zip code and see what we can go and see what kind of comparisons we can make. In most cases, no, oh yeah, okay. So we know we don't have Richmond numbers. We have Virginia and US numbers in terms of salary range. Okay, depending on the job and the data they have. So in this case, you can see where you would start out at. You can anticipate making, 30,000 here in Virginia. Outside of Virginia, maybe it's closer to 40, but you can top at where you might top out at. Obviously, fashion designers are not a preferred breed here in Virginia for some reason. I don't know, but anyway, so this tells you that probably to be really viable, you need to probably look outside the borders of of Virginia to be, to find something that's lucrative. But, it gives you an idea based upon, and again, what kind of education do I have to secure to start, a job that's going to make me this kind of money? Does it make sense, right? Does it make sense? That investment in time and energy and money and in education and a degree is where I'm starting at in terms of salary. Does that make sense to me, right? Okay, so there's that piece, and then come on. Oh, there we did it. Okay, whoop. Okay, let me go back. Come on. All right, so and then down here we can look at growth or okay, they don't have any Virginia data. Normally there's Virginia information, so obviously it's not a big field here in Virginia, but so I picked a bad example, but you get the idea that it will show you, projected growth or decline. Well, nationally it's declining by 4%. Walk the other way. It's, it may not be around by the time you learn how to, design and sew a dress or something, so it just take your passion in a different direction. I mean, look at the numbers, right? And then only 2,300 jobs nationally. That's pretty low to be competing for that few jobs on a national basis. So these are the kind of information that you can use to determine, am I headed in the right direction? Does it make sense? Is it viable? So the two have to come together. And that's what the research is all about in terms of looking at the jobs on the ONET, comparing the information and making good decisions about, what direction you're going to you think you want to go after college, what makes sense to you, so that we can then translate that into an academic path, and that academic path then delivers what college major or majors that we need to have available. Anyway, does that make sense? I think it's pretty intuitive, really, when you think about it. And so yeah, this is available to your student. They will have the assessment the rest of their life as a tool. And I can tell you that if they take it again when they're 55, the deliverables of the assessment will not change. All right. What do I mean by that? The jobs that are displayed will not change unless the job doesn't exist anymore, right?
New ones exist.
Yeah. They may get a little smarter. Personality may change a little bit, but not enough based on all the parts that come into play to bring a new job in or throw a job out. So the results are good, forever in terms of the types of work that they should be considering doing. That is, and when you look at the array of jobs across all the different categories, it doesn't mean, and we're not sitting here saying we're gonna hit the bullseye and they're gonna be, a deep water engineer the rest of their life. No, what we're saying is we're trying to figure out what makes sense in terms of them finding something that makes sense to them when they get to college, to study, to pursue, that they're going to stay with, that's going to make them happy, so that they get in, they get done, and they get out, and they have a job, right? That's our intent. Right? That's what you want, right? A job? Okay. Okay. So that's what it's all about. Now, we are perfectly happy and able, if you want on an individual basis, to meet and look at your student's individual report in detail with you and have that discussion. We can do that. The best way to do that is to contact us through our website, optimumedcenter.com. There is a contact pop-up or whatever that you can fill out, and then in the comments say, I'd like to, I'm at RCS and I'd like to meet individually with you to talk about my assessment, if you're the student, or our student's assessment.
We can do that on Zoom.
We can do the Zoom.
Mhm.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
So when did they get the assessment?
It's emailed to them. They have it.
I emailed out everyone that was completed as of this afternoon. They've been emailed out.
They have them.
There's a handful that have not completed it yet, but if they were completed as of this afternoon, they're in their inbox. All right. So.
And if for some reason they don't have it, just let us know,
Right.
and we'll
Yeah,
investigate.
and send it to the email that they used when they signed up to take the assessment. That's the email that I use to send the reports to.
And they'll see us, over the next year and a half or so, like all through junior year sporadically, and then in the fall of senior year too, to go through the whole process and meet with them, on a group basis. That's been working out really well. We met with the juniors this spring once a month. We met with them in small groups, and went through the whole process of, doing the college search, revisiting their assessments, looking at, direction and all of that stuff too. So we've been having a good time with them.
Right. Yeah. And we'll address the assessment again first thing this coming fall.
Juniors in the fall.
Right. Yeah. So a couple of things just to keep in mind in this process too, I think is important, is that we're after the best fit college. Okay. Not the best college. All right. There's a difference. Right. And I only have to point to the Varsity Blues scandal to tell you how easy a trap it is to start thinking that we need to shoehorn our kid academically into some school that doesn't make sense for them. Okay. Because we're just setting them up to fail. If they don't belong there academically, they shouldn't be there. And then if you look at what we're trying to achieve, where someone went to college is like number 6 on the list of things that employers look at when it comes to hiring. Okay. So what we want is best fit school where they're going to be happy and content, and they're going to earn that degree and be able to find a job coming out of that experience. Certainly if they are exceptional and they want to pursue, you know, a more prestigious school, we'd be happy to have that conversation with them and help them with that. But understand that, you know, when we talk about prestigious schools, the more prestigious they are, the more important the prestige of the student becomes. Okay. These schools do not create prestige, they recruit it. Okay. So the students that go there bring something to the table that school wants that's going to maintain or improve their prestige. Academics open the door, but they don't get you in. Okay. That's why you always hear the stories about, well, you know, Jimmy down the street got a 1600 on his SATs and he didn't get into Harvard. Well, that's probably because all he brought to the table was a 1600. Okay. There's a, you know, that's one of the misconceptions that people have. You know, they don't create success, they recruit success. The kids that go there are already successful as a person and as a student. And so I have to keep that in mind. All right, as we pursue this and our expectations, because we will try to manage expectations. Okay, because we want happiness, contentment. All right, I can keep going. No, all right.
Anybody have any general questions? I mean, we'll be here packing up if you needed a side question or whatever too. So
All
let
right.
us know. Yeah, go ahead.
Do you know how long the students were, like the block of time they were given to take the test or the question paper? A week, 2 days, a day?
Oh, they have actually, the way the thing is set up, they have through the end of the month to take it.
So is it only offered sophomore year?
Yeah, they only take it once. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because it doesn't really change.
If there's some, you know, extenuating circumstances or something where it would be, we would need to do it later on, we certainly can entertain that. Yeah.
I just was curious. I mean, 16 self-evaluation.
I mean, I gave it
Some
to
kids
my,
would think, well, how you was right
Well,
around 16.
no, it's really,
Well, when you're 17.
yeah, no, it's different. It's a full hour assessment and it asks the same question different times. So you can't like fake it out. You know what I mean? And the people that we've talked to, when we give the results individually, how accurate it is kind of scary. Like I gave it to so when I first signed on with OptimaMed, I have a 14-year-old and I had him take it. He was 13 and it's so accurate. I mean, he was a little lower in like the verbal skill, you know, just vocabulary wise, is just not even being an 8th grader yet, but the personality stuff was dead on. Yeah,
It is. You'll be amazed how accurate it is.
It really is. Yeah. And if you want to have us sit with you and your, you know, son or daughter and go over it individually, we'd be happy to do that.
So the link was just sent to the student, not the parent.
So student, he came into the school and did it with him here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Last
the parents did not get the link to the
The
assessment.
results.
Yeah. And we have the results. So if it got lost in transit, let us know. We can send it directly to you.
So I'm going to look at it through his email.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And
if-
it'll look exactly like this did here. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I'm glad you're asking those questions because this really is a 3-way partnership, you know, between us, the student, and the parents.
Mhm.
Everybody needs to be involved, right? And so, you know, we love to have input from the parents. Obviously, the student it's all about the student. It's their game, if you would. But you know, I think what the parents have to say. Obviously,
Mhm.
their insight, having lived with the child for 17, 16 years, whatever it is, probably is valuable, don't you think? So you need to have them involved. Everybody needs to be involved to make this thing work and be successful.
What if a child, I don't know, just thinking about chooses a blue collar job over a white collar job? Is this slant guiding them to HVAC? to
Well,
plumbing,
yeah.
Yes,
care
it,
of
Sure.
it does.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, we can, so what we do, we recommend that this, if they're not sure, we recommend that they do the 4-year college
Mhm.
piece because in the educational questions at the end of the assessment, they ask what your intentions are in terms of education. You can say, I'm not going to college. Or you can say, and depending on what you mark, the jobs that are delivered will be colored in that way, right? So, blue or white kind of thing, right? So, but it's much easier for us to back away from, jobs that show up when someone says I'm going to college than it is to jump ahead from the jobs that show up if someone says I'm not going to college.
Well, and sometimes I think the jobs just give an idea. Like my favorite part is I love to just look at the assessment numbers too, because if they're suited for a hands-on job, those kinds of things are going to show up. It's going to be high mechanical, high technical, they might not want to work with, be in a social kind of position. And I like, it's like, I'm a counselor. I was a school counselor. So like my favorite part is that picking it out and talking about it. And if they have no intention of going to college and they're looking at blue collar careers, then we help them, talk to somebody who's doing that job. We talk to them about what are they going to do in the summer, about connecting them to people in the field. We do a lot of networking. We know a lot of people that we can connect them to, looking at apprenticeships. Are you going to go to trade school, or are you going to go and be, an apprentice and that type of thing? So we talk about all those options.
In fact, we just, one of the juniors here, we just gave him a connection for a paid apprenticeship at a local electrical company. So it's all about direction and finding and figuring out what really makes sense and what fits. And it's, it's more than the report. The report, we describe it as art based on science, right? The science is the results of the assessment, but it's what you do with those results. It's the conversations that ensue from that, and the exploration and discovery that happens. We often have kids that pursue something that's not even shown on the reports, but it starts that process of talking about it.
Well, it exposes them to careers that they might not have ever even heard of before, because they all have this little sphere of people that they know and jobs that they know of, like your nurses, your, electricians, your teachers, but they might not know that, I always thought I wanted to be a teacher, but really, I don't love the teaching in front of a whole classroom piece. I'd rather do this one-on-one kind of stuff, so talking to them and matching that personality by what they think they want, when really it could be just an adjacent kind of position. So we do all of that picking through and working with them on it. And it's an ongoing process all the way up through till, they apply, and even, senior year till they declare a major. It's an ongoing conversation. Yeah.
And I've been through this process once. My son, who's 1 year ahead of my daughter.
Okay.
And he had that scenario that you're talking about, where it came up mechanical abilities.
Yeah.
He does well in school, but he doesn't like school.
Yeah.
So most likely he's not going to have that college path. And
right.
It's not for everybody. Yeah.
Right. Personality traits, the careers that showed up, all that stuff fits to where he's going. And like you said, I like how you put it in the beginning. This is just whatever their first career is going to be.
Yeah.
So start down that path. I mean, we all know that. There's not many people that stay in the same job probably longer than 7 years now. So that gets them started. If down the line he decides, hey, I do want to go to college and that's my education, there's that chance.
You can always change. Yes, that's true.
Or even taking 1 or 2 courses while you're working to find out, okay, do I really maybe want to try this? Or okay, 2 courses, I hate it.
It's all about going into it.
Waste my money on college.
Yeah, it's about going into it with your eyes wide open and having a plan and just making sure you've looked down all of the possible paths, and explored it.
It's about having a plan.
Yep.
And following a process, and that's what it greatly increases the chances for success. And it starts with the assessment.
Yeah, if you look at some of that, some of that research and all that stuff too, and it tends to find that if people are working in the area that they have that skill set where they are much happier.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
you could be making a lot of money and be miserable.
Yeah.
And that doesn't really help anything.
Yeah.
So your skill set lends to a certain career,
Hmm.
and you work in that career, you're generally much happier.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's the old adage, find something you like to do.
And you'll never work a day in your life.
Right.
And that's where this helps.
But, you know, again, so why it's so important for us to explain the assessor. So for example, the mechanical interest, right? It doesn't mean, like Candice was saying, it doesn't mean you're going to be a car mechanic. It doesn't mean you're going to be hammering nails. It means that you like to use equipment and you like to use your hand. Engineers are often mechanical, right? We have jobs such as an anesthesiologist technician who maintains the equipment in the hospital for the anesthesiologist is mechanical. That's mechanically inclined job because you're dealing with equipment, right? Or computer equipment, you know, that sort of thing. It doesn't, so it's important to understand what those terms mean. It's, you know, it's like creative. Doesn't mean you're putting paint on canvas. It means you think innovatively, right? When it comes to the type of work that will make you happy, right? So a pharmacist should not be creative. Just as an example.
I think one of the benefits for you all as parents, that I've seen in the last 2 years is what happens next for you, because we get into next fall, we'll set up a schedule of regular workshops that are designed for students and for parents to walk through very specific parts of this whole process. And we had a couple of parents that we kind of laughed because we said they're going to get a perfect attendance. And they went on and on about how much good information they got from those sessions and how valuable it was for them to understand the whole process, especially if they've never really gone through it before. Now, like if you've got something in college and you walk through it, then there may not be a lot of new stuff for you. But for those who are going through the first time or maybe going through it once, there's so much information that comes out of those. And it's not just how to get into college, it's how to write resumes, how to market yourself, how to find financial aid, how to, you know, all these different things. And then there's a whole section on just grades. How, if your child is interested in grade school, how does that work and how do you pursue that? So I want to encourage you, you know, as you think into the future, in the next semester, next year, you know, I would encourage you to reach out to other folks that you know that are in this grade and share that with them. And I'm going to do the same, try to stay in regular contact over the summer. I try to promote those events as much as we can, you know, throughout the school year, because they'll come up probably once a month, I think, or something like that. And so we'll start early in the school year, go right through the spring. And then that rolls your students right into senior year, applying, getting, you know, the college process or the vocational process. And it really is, it's been a huge benefit for our students to have this program. So please take advantage of, I mean, it's already paid for, so take advantage of it and, you know, get as much out of it as you can.